I am so honored to be joined today by a friend and associate of long standing. This is with Judy Baity. And Judy, thank you so much for joining us to do this little chat for our Milwaukee Choristers conversation that we're wanting to have with you. Uh, we asked you to come and do this with us because we've got history. You're a composer who wrote on commission for us, and we're wanting to check in with you and have an opportunity to chat with you about the piece that you did for us and to learn a little bit more about you and what's going on with your life and how you do what you do so wonderfully. So greetings, and we're happy to have you, Judy.
Well, thank you very much. And I feel very honored that you asked me to be part of this uh, and to be on your website. Yes, we do have a long history with the Milwaukee Choristers and you, James, you know.
And
So,
me, and me, and you know what? I want to talk a little bit about that with you as well. I think I'd like to start with the specific piece that you did, but I definitely want us to tell some of those stories of the ties that bind us and connect us. That'll be really great for me to relive and good for the viewers to see as well. I want to talk with you first about the piece that you wrote for us. It's called The Gift to Sing. You wrote it for us on commission in 2008. And it's your setting of words by James Weldon Johnson, who is, I'm proud to say, my homeboy. I don't know
oh,
whether you knew that or not, but
I did not.
yeah, he was born in Jacksonville, Florida. Um, of course, almost 80 or 90 years before I was born, but still.
Hmm.
And he was, in fact, the principal at one point of the school that brought his mother to town as a teacher, which is Stanton School.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and
Was this a
Stanton's,
secondary school or?
well, it started out at first as a grammar school because this was 1868. And this is 3 years after the end of slavery. And all over the South, especially, schools were popping up. Some of them church schools, some of them schools by various organizations. You know, you'll remember Fisk. Fisk was founded by the American Missionary Association. Stanton was started by the Freedmen's Bureau, which was a federal bureaucracy.
Okay.
And therefore, it was named for Edwin McMaster Stanton, who was the Secretary of War at the time. And James Weldon Johnson his mother was a teacher there, one of the first teachers, he and his brother John. And so as the story goes on, and in case you didn't know, I'm bragging again. Um, in around 1900, he and his brother wrote "Lift Every Voice and Sing," and it was first performed at Stanton. World premiere, "Lift Every Voice and Sing" at Stanton School.
It's so wonderful to learn something new all the time. I did not know that history, so I am quite pleased to know that.
Yeah, and I'm quite proud to share that. And I'm just as proud of the fact that out of the options of text that you had available to you, you chose that wonderful, encouraging, uplifting piece of his called "The Gift to Sing." And you set that to music in such a really fine way. So, do you remember any of the things that went into your choosing that particular piece to set to music?
Well, sure, I do. It's been a while, but
Yeah.
yeah, I do. It did have certain criteria that you, in fact, had given me in terms of what the group wanted us to showcase, and I was one of, I believe, three commissioned
Yes.
composers.
Yes.
Excuse me, and I you wanted a setting of some work or poem by a Harlem Renaissance poet or writer.
Yes, yes.
And I went through quite a few of them. Langston Hughes, and a lot of his writing has been set to music. See, County Cullen. Let me see. I looked at some of Zora Neale Hurston, I believe, and so I looked at, excuse me, I looked at quite a few, and I wasn't looking. I had a wide array of writers and poets to choose from, and I chose on the basis of course, if what had been written would be lyrical and easy to set to music, to be really singable. And so I read a lot of poems. Okay. But they said you had to kiss a lot of frogs. I
Yeah.
read a lot.
You found the prince, though.
I read, and I came across this very short poem. It's not a long poem at all, called "The Gift to Sing." And I have been attracted to James Weldon Johnson before because I find that his poetic writing is very lyrical. And so I kind of looked at it, and in this particular poem, when you look at the stanzas and you know how the poem was laid out, it was quite, I thought, quite singable, and I narrowed it down to 3 finalists, and frankly, I can't remember what the other 2 were, and I'm sorry because I should have got that information for this interview, but it was 3 finalists. And I just thought that the text of the poem would have a lot of meaning to the choir, and I believe it was for your, was it for your anniversary?
Well, yeah. So actually, the main impetus for this particular piece was the fact that we were going to do this really incredible exchange with the Brazil Denard Chorale out of Detroit. And so we were just
another friend.
yeah. Oh, he was amazing, wasn't he?
Yes.
Amazing. And so we were really excited about that, and so we wanted something that would connect in a special way, connect us with a shared cultural heritage, which is where the poetry from the Harlem Renaissance came in. And in fact, you know, we may have even referred to it, labeled that whole thing as heritage project. But so the idea was to create something that drew from that particular well of music, of poetry, and put it to music.
Okay, I see. When I finally decided on that poem, I did search quite heavily to see if any other composer had set those words to music. It had never been done, and I did have to get permission to use the poem because I think all of James Weldon Johnson's works are now. Oh gosh, I can't think of the group just that fast. It just. But anyway, I did have to get permission. They did give me permission to use it, so that's why you got the piece.
Well, I'm so glad that they gave you permission. I know that there are a few stories that litter the compositional landscape where composers have assumed that they would get an okay, and they've even started working on setting text, only to find out that they were refused the your permission to actually set.
Yeah, if you'll give me just a second, I can pull that file. Okay, see, I got a file on The Gift to Sing.
Now, I've got to tell you, tell you this. That is so impressive. For me, that would have been going through about 2 or 3 days worth of boxes, hoping that I could have located it, and not being able to locate it. And you went right to it. That's amazing.
That's well, yeah. I set up a file on any work that it's far, 10 tends to kind of stick, then I have a file. So I have all the history of the work and my notes and that kind of thing. So I can tell you right off, for instance, that it was the Penguin Group in New York City that has the rights to all of James Weldon works. So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here right now looking at the letter that you wrote me about.
Really,
Okay.
really. Can you read some of that? Would you mind?
And it's okay. And it's actually it's not the letter from you. It's the letter from Fred Gerlich.
For Gerlach. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Gerlich.
Yes. Yeah, he
Okay.
was our treasurer at the time. Yes.
Okay. This was September 10, 2007.
Okay.
Dear Ms. Baity, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Milwaukee Choristers Incorporated and on the advice of Dr. James B. Kinchin Jr., our conductor, I am delighted to send you herewith a commissioning contract in connection with our African American music project. Please sign one copy initially in the first thereof and return it to me. Note the requirement to agree with Dr. Kinchin by September 20th, 2007 on the text of a Harlem Renaissance poet to be used in your work. The completed work should be sent on or before May 1, 2008 to Dr. James Kinchin. May I add that having one of those choristers to sing for your recording session, I am personally delighted to have you playing a major part in this very important project.
Yeah.
Sincerely yours, Frederick H. Gerlich.
Yes, right. Yeah, and of course, that would be another thing for listeners after we've sort of talked about this a little bit, for them to know what the recording project was, because that was a pretty exciting thing that we got to do. But let's stay on this for a bit. So let me ask a question that may be obvious, but maybe not. You obviously accepted that commission from us. What influenced you to say yes?
Oh my gosh, there was no question about that. But there were a lot of pluses to that. I mean, that was a consideration. The only consideration in not doing it would have been that there was something on my end that I couldn't complete it by the time that you needed it or something like that. But no, I was absolutely honored and delighted that you asked me, so there's no question about that. And there were pluses to it, in fact, because the other two composers are very good friends of mine and colleagues, not just colleagues, but friends. And that was Robert Morris and Robert Harris.
Yes. Wow. And so we were real excited to get that. And I guess to flip the question a little bit, again, in the interest of sharing with, and I'm going to try my video again and hope I don't freeze things.
Here you are.
Yeah, okay. To share with the listener a little bit, with the viewer a little bit. The question, if it's flipped, is why did we ask you? And the answer to that is that I really admired your music and really loved what you did with your music, and particularly related to the word, to the text. Okay. And that goes back to some of the first work of yours that I heard, which would have been pieces that were sung by the Heritage Chorale of Milwaukee under the direction of the indomitable Ella J. Washington, our friend and our colleague who left us way too soon. But to have the chance to hear some of your work, and of course at that time you were still based in Milwaukee, yeah?
Yes.
And you were their accompanist as well, and what strong and graceful at the same time piano playing you did in support of them in their performances. And
Thank you.
To have heard your pieces, allowed me to really have a chance to be drawn to what you did with your music and how you set the words in such a strong and at the same time sensitive way.
Well, thank you.
Some of the earlier things, I remember the Hold Thy Peace, which and the piece that we Choristers ended up singing that as well, and then why don't you give God the glory?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and
That, by the way, that was why don't you give God the glory was a commission from Robert Morris when he was at Jackson State.
wow, small world,
Mhm.
small world. Yeah. So yeah, so I really liked what you did, and of course, at at some earlier point, in fact, Fred was mentioning in the letter having worked on that recording project of your pieces, and those pieces that he's talking about were from the Bethune Suite, were they? Have you ever
Which
taught this?
ones? Which ones?
The recording project that Fred was alluding to in the letter.
Oh, yes, it
Yes,
was.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Right, right. And we had a little. You and I had a little bit of history with the Bethune Suite pieces, in a sense. Yeah.
Yes, I would call it way more than a little bit of history, because uh, you and I remember distinctly the telephone conversation that you and I had when I was looking for a major project to do, and we were talking, and frankly, I don't remember what I said I might do, and you asked me or suggested to me that I might uh, do something that was based on the literary will of Mary McLeod Bethune. And I said, oh, I'd never even thought of that. And I had not read the will. I think I was aware of it,
Mm-hmm,
but I
mm-hmm.
had never read it. And I said, okay, I will. And I got where I read it was from the issue of Ebony
Mm-hmm,
that it
mm-hmm.
was printed in about, I think it was about 1955, 50,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's
somewhere
about,
in there.
yeah.
So I got an old copy of, I somehow got, I found it somewhere, but anyway. And I don't think the entire will was published in Ebony, but it was, most of it was in there.
Mm-hmm,
Certainly, it gave me an idea of what she was saying,
mm-hmm,
and that led to so much. At the time, I was looking for a grant to really do this major work from Serge Kuzovitsky's
mm-hmm,
foundation.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I applied for that grant, and did not get the grant. Okay, did
Mm-hmm.
not get the grant. So I was a little disappointed in that. And it was also right around, I was writing this also right around the time when I was making a major life decision as to whether to remain in Wisconsin
Mm-hmm.
or to, further my education somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I ended up um, going to University of Southern California and staying in California after I received my certificate. It was a certificate program for um, commercial music,
Mm-hmm.
and TV and film and TV scoring. So
Mm-hmm.
it was all the writing of this whole work was also involved in terms of in making a major life change. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was so delighted you made that suggestion. And then I started reading the will, and it had different sections about, I leave you love. I leave you a power.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I leave you faith. I leave you a education, not an education, but a yearning for education.
Mm-hmm.
All those were in that will, and I just found the words very powerful. I ultimately went to to do more research to make sure that what I was trying to do was write pieces that I felt, I obviously did not know her personally,
Mm-hmm.
but that I felt that she would be pleased with her words being set to music. So I went to Bethune-Cookman College,
Wow.
university at
Yes.
that time.
Yeah.
They were really very good. They gave me access to her house and more than just,
Mhm.
being a tourist. I could
Yes.
actually go in and touch the furniture and look at the
Wow.
kitchen so they gave me
Wow.
that kind of access. And then that was also in the process of making sure that I had permission from them to set those words to music.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that came about. I think I know which one is your favorite.
So what do you think?
Huh?
So what do you think?
Faith.
Faith. Yeah. 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 I mean, if I had to pick one, I think you're right. I think it would be Faith. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, well, and I think that probably the viewer, we're talking in the context of knowing lots about Mary McLeod Bethune. The viewer might not. So Mary McLeod Bethune was this wonderful, wonderful visionary woman who is also one of the strongest people that I know of in the 20th century, who had this vision. She was a native of North Carolina. She had this vision, which she brought to bear in Florida, of starting this school. She had a special sensitivity to the plight of Black women, young Black women, and wanting to start the school to help them elevate themselves through education. And she started famously with $1.75 of her own money invested in getting this thing going. You imagine a whole college starting with $1.75, but she did that, and over time it grew, and then it incorporated another existing school, the Cookman School, and so it became a Bethune-Cookman. And she, in her own time, when it came to the attention of the Roosevelts, and was a confidant of Eleanor Roosevelt, and was invited on several occasions to the White House, met with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I don't know whether you know the story, and your stories are the ones we want to hear. People don't want to hear my stories necessarily,
Oh,
but I got to tell it.
I'm so enjoying it myself.
I got to tell this one. So on one occasion, she was going to the White House, and she's walking up, if you can imagine, that curved driveway leading up to the entrance of the White House. Well, at that time, all of the people who worked at the White, and it may be the same now, who worked at the White House were African Americans. Okay, all of the servants. Okay, so here's
Mhm.
a man who was a groundskeeper, and he saw her going up. She was dressed in a suit and having her purse and all that,
And
and
going to the front of
going front, yeah. And so he said, "Hey, Annie," he said, "don't you know you can't go up into the White House through the front?" And the story is that she was a short woman. Okay, but
Mhm.
she pulled herself up to her full height, and she looked at him for a moment, and she said, "Now, which one of my sister's sons are you?"
Mm.
And of course, and as you know from history, terms like auntie and uncle were sometimes used in a disparaging or less than respectful way, to refer to Black people. And he had used that, and he had crossed the line that he should not have crossed. And so she said, "And which one of my sister's sons are you?" And then
Yeah,
she turned around and she walked on up and got in. I'm sure he was flabbergasted that she got in.
but
Uh,
that was the mindset of the day,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and people have to understand that, especially when you're studying history, that
Mhm.
you have to try to put yourself into the mindset of the day.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
we
But
can't look at that history with 21st century eyes, or how this country was at that particular time. That's
yeah,
the way it was. You didn't
yeah.
go stepping into the front of the
Right.
into the,
Yeah.
there could be serious consequences for doing something like that.
Absolutely. And she was such an amazing exception. But I'm so impressed to hear that you went there and you actually visited and went into the house where she wrote this last will and testament, you know.
I did that. I interviewed uh, about three of the people who knew her and worked with her. They were still alive at that particular point in time. So I had to
Oh,
go back and check my notes because I have again,
yeah.
if you think the file on the gift to sing is big, I've got a huge file with all of my notes in it and everything. There were there were I heard some funny tales. And I can't remember who told me some of those things, but I know, for instance, one of the instructors down there who had been working with Dr. Bassoon said, they've got all these stories out about Mary McLeod Bethune that she just loved to cook and working in her kitchen when she had the time to make these wonderful meals for people. So she couldn't cook a lick. Those were she could, she couldn't cook a lick. I don't know where they got that idea, and they're trying to make her, be everybody's mother. Oh no.
Oh. Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Because I had heard stories about a sweet potato pie.
Oh yeah,
So I
forget it.
guess that
No.
forget it. Okay.
Yes, no, that's folk legend that somebody made up. She said she couldn't cook a sweet potato pie.
Oh, wow, 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 wow. So I want to go back a little bit to the gift to sing, and as best you can remember it, as best you can reconstruct it. What was your creative journey? What sort of creative path did you take? Obviously, you started from this text, this poem that you liked, that you thought was lyrical, that lent itself to musical setting. Do you remember how the ideas came for you as you worked through
Whoa,
that?
that's that I would have to. I can't. Wait a minute. Let me take a look at the poem. uh, I don't know whether would I would like if you don't mind. It's not a long poem. Do you
Yes.
think I might be able to read part of it
Oh
or
gosh,
read it?
I would love that. We would love
Okay,
that.
it's in three stanzas, and
Yeah.
I mean, you would have thought that this was actually he had a song in mind, and he may have,
Mm.
but that because my goodness, I can't. The cadence are the same, so it's like you've got three verses, so there's three stanzas. So the first one is sometimes the mist overhangs my path and blackening clouds around about me. Let me start this again. I can't read it.
Okay.
Let's start this.
No.
Sometimes the mist overhangs my path and blackening clouds about me cling. But oh, I have a magic way to turn the gloom to cheerful day. I softly sing. That's the first stanza. So that hit me right away because I so identify with that. The second stanza says, and if the way grows darker still, shadowed by sorrow's somber wing, with glad defiance in my throat, I pierce the darkness with a note and sing and sing. So it's so hopeful, even though things are going the wrong way. It's so hopeful. And the third and last verse is, I brood not over the broken past, nor dread whatever time may bring. No nights are dark, no days are long, while in my heart there swells a song, and I can sing.
Oh.
So I mean, you can just feel the whole pathway of the poem. You can feel the life lived in the man, and he's talking about uh, the spirit, what brings him to just joyfully uh, accept what's coming and deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
And at the light, there's this beautiful sunlight of I can sing. And it doesn't mean that I sound that wonderful, but
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
can sing. And
Yes.
I said, that would be great for the choir. I just, because I know when things get tough, I feel very fortunate as a a musician, that I can go to the piano, and it doesn't have to even be a song. Fortunately, I played a long time. I'm a fairly good improviser. I'll just go
No,
and
not
start,
fairly,
lay my
but you're
hands
good.
on the keys and just see
You're
what
good.
happens.
No, you're a
So,
good improviser. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I just go and I start, whatever comes. And, and he was a wonderful musician. And the power of uh, our voice doesn't have to be a beautiful voice, but we all have one.
Mm.
And just that you can just sing. And if you
Mm.
can't even uh, sing any words, or you don't remember a specific song, you can hum, you can moan, you
Mm.
can loo, whatever. And then you have your own beat, and it will lift you.
Mhm,
It will
mhm.
lift you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that's a good point. I'm marveling anew at the. Actually, I'm going to try my face again and see if I'll freeze everything out or no. Okay. So I'm marveling anew at the fact of your choosing this particular piece, because you started out with a trove of different possibilities, this poem. And out of all of those that you wound up with this one, and just what a what an apt and an appropriate choice that was. Also, the gift to sing is something that's very human and very universal. At the same time, the gift to sing, especially for a boy who was born around 1870 or something like that, and for whom most of the African American people he knew had been slaves.
Yeah.
It was very, very specific to that experience, where a whole succession of generations of people, sometimes all they could do when they faced the hardships of life was to sing. And to let that voice, whatever that voice sounded like
Whatever.
you said, whatever, to let that voice become then the way that they got themselves through that moment, through that hour, through that day, through that lifetime.
Yeah, he says, I pierce the darkness with a note.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
One note. I pierced all of that darkness
Hmm.
with a note. Okay. And it was just, this is one of my, when I was researching, and the picture of James Weldon
James Bond,
Johnson.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
yes.
that's all in my files here.
Yeah, yes, yes. Wow. The people who know you as a composer, and by the way, we have done works of yours since the 2008 premiere. Okay, so there are people
What
who,
have you done?
well, we've done Why Don't You Give God the Glory? We have done The Gift to Sing, twice since 2008. They would program that. Okay. We've also programmed a piece, and there's a little story here. The piece that you did In Life and Death, We Belong to God. Do you remember that piece?
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember. There's a story behind that one too.
Yeah, there is. So I think we'll come back and talk about that. So they know you as a composer, but I would wager that very few people really knew you as a pianist, And of course, my first introduction to you was as a composer and as a pianist, because you were the accompanist for Heritage, right?
Yes.
Uh, and what you're talking about, your wonderful improvisational ability, and at the same time, very technically strong and fluent pianist pianistic skills that you brought to the table. Okay, those
Well,
are
thank you.
things that well, yeah, gosh, oh my gosh, I took them for granted. But in this piece, the gift to sing, it's it's like I'm hearing your piano. You know what I'm saying? It's
Mm.
not just an accompaniment. It's your piano, your style, all of those things that make it special when Judy sits down and play, as we used to say, tickles the ivories. I'm hearing that, and to me, that's really such a special thing. There's a moment of Judy showing up, not just as a composer, that's obvious, but also through the way that the piano speaks as an instrument.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So in life and death, we belong. So it's the story there. Uh,
Well, the story of In Life and Death, that was a commission too. That was a church in, I'd have to go get the file to remember the name of the church, but it was in Lansing, Michigan. And I was recommended, I believe, by one of my professors at Michigan State that I was attending at that particular time. And so they wanted a piece that was based on the Presbyterian. There was a Presbyterian. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, I gotta look.
I think so. I think so. I think you're right.
It's not the Nicene Creed, but it was a creed of that particular church. And I said, oh, and at that particular point, and I think I told you, I, as a composer, as you're writing, you tend to bond with your pieces to a certain, put it this way, bond or not bond. With your pieces, at least I do. I can't speak for all composers, so I'll just speak for myself. That was a piece that I did not have a chance to bond with. At that particular time, I was trying to get my master's in Michigan State, so I was a student. I also was trying to manage my grandmother's health care, the woman who raised me and is responsible for my being a musician. She was in the throes of dementia, and I was trying to manage her health care long distance from Michigan. I had really wonderful people taking care of her. And so she was dying at that particular point in time. And I was trying to, and I had also gotten this commission. So I was doing three things. And so I just basically wrote. I had my text and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. I never, for that matter, really even internally listened to the song. And I wrote it. I got it done on time. My grandmother passed away. I got my master's. And you wanted a piece. And you had looked through some of my pieces, and so I forget what you were going to do it, perform it for, what was the event. But nevertheless, you said we talked, and you said, I decided that we're going to do In Life and Death. And I kind of blinked and and said, that old thing. Basically, I go, you want to do that? And I just went, oh, okay. And so whenever the concert was, I came and I sat down and I listened. That was the first time, really, James, that I heard the piece. Okay. It's the first time I heard it. And you did such a beautiful interpretation of it with the choir that I was really sitting out there with tears kind of, in my eyes, because it brought me, as the choir was singing it brought back to me everything that I was going through at the time that I was writing the piece. And apparently that was getting into the piece, and you found it because I couldn't see it. You found it as you were teaching it to the choir. And it's like, when you listen to pieces and or that you haven't heard for a long time that were part of your life, and then it brings you back to those moments in your life. And sometimes it'll it might be music, it might be a smell or something that just takes you back in that space. Well, as I was sitting there listening to the choir sing that, it took me back to that space that I was in, and that I had never really consciously given the piece was a commission. I was grinding it out, had to get it out, and boom, and here it is, folks. And in fact, I'm not sure that they were able to perform the whole piece. I'm not quite sure what happened, but I hadn't bonded with the piece. And then I heard the choristers sing it. And it was, I'm going, oh my gosh. So you really heard the piece for me, James. You and the way you and the choir gave that piece to me, because I was totally separated from that piece.
Well, that just meant so much. I can't begin to tell you how much that meant that we were able to connect with you with your impulse and to bring that to bear in the performance of that piece. That to me is probably the ultimate compliment that any performer can have about any composer's work, and that just meant a great deal. And and at the same time, it started me to thinking, because at that point, to be honest with you, at that point, it never occurred to me that a composer would write a piece and not have some level of bonding with it. And then I thought, you know what? So you're going to giggle when I say this now. So get ready. At that point, I'm thinking, at these upper division or graduate level analysis classes. Now, for those who are viewing, what that is where you've got all of these musicians in a room, and you take a piece and you break it down and you talk about Beethoven did this, and when you get to the B section, he does this, and then look how he takes this motive, and all of those kinds of things. You break it down to try to understand what the composer did. And I started to think that, wow, if they could come back from the dead, people like Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and all those folks would be hanging out at the analysis classes to hear what they did. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and they'd be going like, I did that? Wow. I did. Oh, yeah. I mean, now, Grant.
It's not that technical. It's really, I don't think, at least for me, again, I can't speak for everybody else, but it's not really that technical when I'm writing it.
Yeah.
The heart goes first.
Yes.
And then I try to take the skills that I've acquired and shape that. But the heart goes first, and the heart will rule over the skill or the particular compositional rule that you happen to be facing at a particular time.
Yeah. But that is precisely it. That you do the technical thing. In this case, you had the commission, you had to get it out of the way, you had to submit it. Oh my gosh, this deadline is coming up. But look at the heart.
The heart was always there, James. That's the whole thing. Yeah. I did not realize that though until you folks gave that back to me. See, because otherwise, I would have been totally separated from the piece.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I wasn't. But in my mind, I had to take care of everything else that was going on in my life, and so this was just a task.
Yeah.
It really wasn't. I just did not know that at the time.
Yeah. Well, that was a gift to me and to us that we were able to do that. That's really wow. So I've got a transition. Yeah.
That piece is just as important to our relationship as the gift to sing.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's a gift. Thank you. So in talking a little bit about history, you obviously didn't spring from the womb playing the piano and composing music and all of those things. At some point, you and music met, and having met, decided that at some point we like each other. We'll hang out together. So, what can you share with us about your early years as a musician? How did you come to embrace music, or to have music embrace you, or you embrace each other? Tell us about
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. But just as a backstory, the grandmother that I was telling you about, that I was caring for as she was dying from Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not Alzheimer's, but dementia.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. Dementia. She raised me because my mother passed away when my mother, her daughter, passed away when I was 9 years old. But my grandmother has always been in my life as a mother figure. My grandmother was very musical. A lot of people, even in our family, didn't realize that my grandmother was musical and played the piano by ear. She was born in rural Georgia in 1899. A wonderful woman. If she had not been Black, if she had not been a woman, if she had been born later, she was destined to be someone really, really great. She had pluck, and she had real pluck. Okay, so that's a little bit about her, and I could spend a whole day talking about my grandmother and talking about how my life would have been so different if it had not been for my grandmother. So anyway, I was born in 1944, and in those days, radio was, sort of in its infancy, and TV, everybody didn't have a TV, but most people had a piano in their home, and there was at least one person in everyone's home that played that piano, because that piano was a form of entertainment. And so, yes, we had a piano, and my grandmother would play it, and she would kind of play it in the plunky style that they played down in the country, kind of the hum, that kind of beat,
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Okay. So when my mother came along, my grandmother wanted her to have music, because my grandmother so badly wanted to read music and to really, study music, and she just never had the opportunity. Well, my mother was having none of it, and it did not work. So unfortunately, my parents split up when I was very young, and so my mother was forced to move in with her parents again. So I came along. I was about 1 or 2 or something like that when my parents split up, and I kept gravitating to the piano. And my grandmother used to always tell this tale about, here I was climbing up on the seat, banging on this piano. And she said, I'm really tired of this banging. I am going to see if I can find someone to give you piano lessons. Yeah. So that's what she did. And there was a lady, I can see her now, Miss Cooperside, who went through the neighborhood giving piano lessons for 50 cents a lesson. So she got Miss Cooperside. And I was bang, 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 bang. And pretty soon I was playing little tunes. Wow. The first wedding that I played for was my mother's second marriage, actually. I played the little Here Comes the Bride for him. So I was about 5 years old. That was the first wedding.
Really? Wow.
Okay. And it was it was a house wedding. And so I played. So I started playing for church on a regular basis when I was 7 years old. And in that time, my grandmother decided that it looked like, this was going to be a go. So I ultimately started taking music lessons at the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music. And they were, at that particular time, they were down at 3rd and Kilburn. They had since moved out to, they're on the lake. On Lake Drive, I believe, or Prospect, somewhere in that area. Okay, and so, my grandmother said to me, she suggested that I think you should learn how to play the organ. I thought, I don't want to play. I want to be a member of the Girl Scouts. I want to be in the Girl Scouts. So we had a little tussle about that. And my grandmother said to me, now I always remember, she said, I want you to take the organ lessons. She said, because eventually the Girl Scout things will probably die away. She said, but if you learn how to play the organ, that is a skill you will always have. And it will serve you well. How right she was. It's serving me right now. So I learned how to play pipe organ. Okay. So I would take piano lessons and pipe organ. And then my teacher at Wisconsin Conservatory, because I didn't know, she said, I think you should take harmony. Harmony, what's that? I don't even know what she's talking about. So I started taking harmony lessons, harmony classes actually, at the conservatory, and really just loving delving into how music is constructed and the rules that govern certain things, and chords and intervals and lines and form and analysis and counterpoint. Oh my gosh. Here I am, and I don't consider myself a nerdy person, but every time I would say how much I love going to theory class, my other folks look at me and, go, but I loved it. So then this is my grandmother again. I think you should take some lessons from Mr. Hunter, Merrill Hunter, who was our minister of music at Calvary Baptist Church in the 50s. He came from St. Louis. He was a wonderful organist. And she said, you should learn how to play the Hammond organ. Well, there's for those who don't know, there's a world of difference between playing a Hammond organ and playing a pipe organ.
Yes.
The technique is different. The sound is different. How the stops are made are totally different. And stylistically, well, I mean, you can play, put it this way, you can play a Hammond organ to a certain extent, the same as you can play a pipe organ, but it's very difficult to play a pipe organ like a Hammond organ.
Yes.
So one of the things that also as a little kid, and I just had a very special upbringing. Even after my mother had passed away, my stepfather was so supportive also in making sure that I had my music lessons. Goodness, I'm sorry. Am I getting too far off?
Well, no, please. Yeah.
Okay.
You're fine.
So so anyway, so I started playing the Hammond organ. We had a Hammond organ at church, and so I started stylistically listening and understanding how you play the Hammond organ and how you use it to play gospel music. And so I was getting all of that different kind of instruction at that particular time. Now, let me just go back a little bit. When I was 7 years old again, because my grandmother saw that it looked like I was really doing a lot of playing. She said, you need a new piano. You need a piano. Mind you, I'm a 7-year-old little girl. So, think of our children at 7 years. I was 7. She took me down to the Stark Piano Company. I believe it was on Water Street at that time. And she said to me, because she had gone down there before, and she had looked at pianos and everything, and she picked 3 pianos that she liked. And she took me down there. She said, "But you're gonna get a piano." And I said, "Okay." And so she took me and she said, "These are the 3 that I like, but I'm going to give the final decision to you." I'm the little 7-year-old girl.
Wow.
To pick the one that you want. And so I picked the one that I wanted. I don't think it was the one that my grandmother really liked, because she kind of went, All right. But I stuck with that. And I remember distinctly going into the office, and my grandmother was signing the papers. The piano cost $750. And in
That's a
1951,
piece of
that was a
change.
lot of money.
Yeah,
Okay.
piece of change.
And
Yeah.
to spend on a 7-year-old little girl, I think about that so very much. But my grandmother was very strict. She was a disciplinarian, so she didn't take any stuff. I told you she had pluck. So she looked at me, and I remember she had the pen in her hand about to sign the papers for the piano. And she said, now you have got to promise me that you are going to practice this piano and you're going to play it. And I remember saying that, right, 7 years old, I promise. I promise.
Okay.
And she signed it and I got the piano. And I finally, a few years ago, donated that piano to Calvary Baptist Church. A whole lot of my work for them was practiced on that piano. So I donated that piano to Calvary Baptist Church.
Wow.
And I think about that, and I think about, because I don't deal with children as much as I used to, but I still do. And I've had some as young as 4 or 5 years old. And I always remember that I look at those children that are 5 and 6 and 7 years old. Do not dismiss them. Do not take them for granted. Many, many times a child already knows what they want their destiny to be.
Yes.
And my grandmother, she saw something, and I praise God for her every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of my grandmother. There's not a time that I don't sit at that piano and think about the fact that I'm sitting there because of her. See, I'm about to well up again here. And I just think about sitting. My feet didn't touch the ground. Singing, although it was very fair because I'm fairly tall. And her spending that kind of money on the say-so of a 7-year-old child.
That was empowerment.
That was very powerful to me.
Yes. Look, I want to ask you to shift gears just a little bit while we still have a little time, because at some point, and obviously you're going to harmony classes, help pique your interest about a lot of the innards of music. But how did you come to start composing?
Oh gosh, I'm going to have to hop over a lot of stuff and everything. I did, first of all, just so you understand what I have to hop over, I did not realize that I had any kind of compositional skills until I was in my late 30s.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know whether you know, I went to Howard University. And Howard is really very popular these days. Yay. But I went there, and I don't know whether you remember these people, but when I was going to Howard, I had instructors like Doris McGinty, Evelyn White.
Yes, I knew Evelyn White. Yes.
Okay, Mark Fax.
I knew of Mark Fax. Yes.
Okay, Mark Fax. Oh, wonderful. He was my theory teacher. I was there in the I started Howard in 1961. I stayed there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. At that time, Warner Lawson was the dean of the School of Music.
I knew of Warner Lawson. Yes.
Okay. And when I got there, Howard had just completed a new facility for its College of Fine Arts, in which it had music, dance, and drama. So they had Crampton Auditorium, a wonderful auditorium, Ira Aldrich Theater for the drama, so in a whole School of Fine Arts. And so we were the first class to go, and they just completed it and just opened it up. And I don't know whether people think that gospel music is it's a Black genre, and everybody loved it. Well, at that particular time, we didn't dare go into there and play gospel music. Oh,
I've heard those stories. I've heard those stories.
Oh yeah. Oh no. And in fact, what we would do is because that's how I learned how to play gospel music. We weren't formally taught. I got it from Mr. Hunter and listening, And one of us would be on lookout in the practice rooms, because they had a whole nice series of practice rooms down in the basement. And we would have a lookout, and we would get together. We would be playing jazz and gospel music. One of us would always serve as a lookout, because if Dean Lawson came down there, he would throw a fit, So that's what we did, and people look at me. I thought everybody, no. No, you did not go into Howard University playing gospel music. Oh no, you played the hymns and the master, everything of the masters, and that was the way it was.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry, I lost my train now. What did you?
No, we're following your path to being a composer.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and I ultimately went to the University of Wisconsin, so I did not graduate from Howard. But I'm going to tell you right now, so that everybody knows that I've been fortunate to go to several schools. I've just been a fortunate person. But I still today in my teaching, I go back and take what I got from Evelyn White, from Mark Fax, okay, from Doris McGinty. And I saw Doris McGinty maybe about at a NAMM convention, maybe about a year or two before she passed away. And I eased, because she was a tough teacher. She was a Rhodes Scholar. She had gotten her doctorate from Oxford, in musicology. Okay. And she wore you out. And so I eased over to her, and I said, "Oh, Dr. McGinty, it's so good to see you. I was one of your students at Howard, blah, blah, blah." And she goes, "Oh, I remember you, Judy." And I just melted, because I was not a very good student. But she was just, a wonderful, wonderful person. And Evelyn White, I have a picture of Evelyn White. All of I taught sight singing. I was a TA when I was at Michigan State, taught sight singing, ear training and sight singing. All of that was from what I learned from Miss White. She didn't take any stuff. You get in there, you better know it, and you better sing it, and you better get those intervals right, because you were going to get embarrassed. I love it. I love it. Because those were some of the masters, and it didn't matter what color they were. Vera Scott was a master of playing Mozart. She just beautiful. She had a beautiful touch. She was my piano teacher when I was there. Okay. So anyway, that was what happened at Howard, which was a big stop for me. I was, in terms of becoming a composer, I was in the basement of Carl Fisher in Chicago, looking for music for my choir, because I played off and on for churches ever since I was 7. So I was looking for some music, and I believe it was some kind of a Christmas piece. And I was down in the basement, and I kept going through all these pieces of music, and I'm going to myself, "Oh, I don't like this." And I was going, I think I could really write stuff as well as this. And I started writing music.
Wow.
That's how I started, looking for stuff for my choir. And what came out of that was, I didn't realize I could write. I wrote one little piece, and it was a work that I started called Mary's Story, which is based having the Christmas story is told from Mary and Joseph's point of view. And so it's a combination of working a scripture in with, my own words, because I have written words to my own music. Understanding Love is one. I don't know whether you've ever done Understanding Love, but I wrote the words to that.
Yes.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay. And so I started writing, and so I didn't know how to present it to my choir. I wrote one little piece. I don't even remember what the piece was. I wrote one little piece, and I was in choir rehearsal, and I said, I want to try something with you if you don't mind. And so I decided to pull this little piece, and I had it, copied for everybody. And I just wanted to see, this was going to make me or break me. If they didn't like it, that was going to be the end of this writing stuff. So I wrote it, and then they started, and they were really getting into it. I said, maybe I hit onto something. So I wrote it. I wrote another one. A couple of weeks, I came back with another. They liked that too. I said, oh my goodness. So it ultimately ended up to be a Christmas cantata entitled Mary's Story. It was performed at Calvary 2 straight years in a row. And the first time, everybody just loved it. From that, Carl Fisher published See My Babe. That came from that Mary's Story.
Yes.
And of course, I was absolutely on the moon. I haven't had any kind of lessons. I am writing. I got a major publisher to publish my piece. I can't believe it. And so the next time, the next year when we performed Mary's Story, because the choir, the congregation, everybody wanted it, we had to have 2 performances of it. So we did a 4:00 service and a 7:00 service, made a whole day of it for the music department. Everybody, the ushers, they pitched in, had childcare for everybody. They cooked, the people came in and cooked so that the choir didn't have to do anything that day but sing. Wow. We had tickets. It wasn't a matter that we sold tickets, but we had for each one of those performances, the sanctuary was totally full.
Wow, that's amazing.
Totally full. And it was a wonderful day. Everybody was dog tired by the time we ended up the day, but it was like they said, it was like 3 days before Christmas. They said, absolutely the best day at church I've ever had. Never went out. And then, it was really, so I knew I had something then in terms of being a composer. We did another work called the something about the letters of Paul. I'll have to go and look again because it's getting kind of and from that work, Understanding Love came out of that, and Jesus Paid the Price. And so I kind of put the kibosh on my cantata writing. One of the reasons was I really felt that I needed to go back to school, or at least have some more instruction. And that's where I met Robert Harris. At that time, he was at Northwestern, and he was the head of the choral department at Northwestern University School of Music. And he just recently retired from there.
Yes.
Okay. And let me see. I lost my train of thought again because I went to.
Well, you wanted to learn more about composing, get some more guidance in composing.
And I didn't. The way I wanted to write music, I couldn't seem to quite find the person that, because when you're taking compositional lessons, it's kind of a real private lessons, and it's sometimes it gets very subjective. You're talking about all kinds of things in terms of how you arrive at what you're going, some kind of a song that you're going to present to people. And so I was not finding the kind of instructor that I wanted. And Ella, the person that we said, our friend and colleague who passed away too soon, knew Dr. Harris, and she suggested that I try him. I had never heard of him. And ultimately what happened with that was every 2 weeks I would drive down to Evanston for my composition lessons. He would give me a whole bunch, and I'd write for 2 weeks, and then we would go back. After about 3 years, he kicked me loose. He said, you don't need me anymore. But in those days, though, what had happened was I did not have a degree. I had gone to a lot of schools, but I did not have a degree. A lot of things in life had gotten in the way of that. And so then when my job ended with John Hancock Insurance, which was I had a great position there with them. But they left Milwaukee, and I decided to sever out of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at a point in time in my life where I had to make a major decision. What are you going to do with the rest of your life?
Mm-hmm.
And I was fortunate that my severance from John Hancock paid me for the next 2 years, and I could just sit home for nothing and collect my salary every week.
No.
So I had plenty of time to make a decision without being rushed into doing something that I didn't want to do for financial reasons. So I had the finances to carry me through. So I decided, you know what, I am going for broke. I want to be a musician. Music is my life. I want to be a musician. And now my children are old enough that I don't have to ask anybody to make that sacrifice with me just in case things don't work, right? That's what I'm going to do. So the first thing that I did was I went back to school and I got my bachelor's degree. And I got it not in music education, which is what I was studying at Howard, but in composition, theory composition. That's what.
Wow. Surprise, huh? Yeah.
Surprise, yeah. And all I was aiming for was the bachelor's degree. And I had friends that said, have you ever thought about getting a master's? No, I didn't think about getting a master's. Well, why don't you think about getting a master's? Hey, I got the bachelor's, I'm fine, There's such a long story, but ultimately I got to Michigan State. It was suggested actually by Dr. Harris because that's where he had gone to school. And he knew Jerry Hutcherson there. I don't know whether you are familiar with him. And so I ended up, and by the way, at that time I had applied to USC for a master's too, and I didn't get in. Okay, they hurt my feelings. So I went to Michigan State. Wonderful experience. They treated me like a queen, and I'm in my 40s at that particular time. I didn't pay a dime for that education. I got grants and I got a wonderful TA. I did all of the freshman and sophomore ear training and sight singing as a TA. I played for a church over there. It was meant to be because I mean, it just, and I'm saying, this is what I'm supposed to do. I know things are going to work out. This is what I'm supposed to do. And so I got the master's. I came back. I played at Calvary for 5 years. I was their minister of music. I continued to write. And during that period, that's where these songs that you were talking about, and I met you. That's how all that kind of happened. And music has been the centerpiece of my life, certainly ever since, because I made that promise to myself that I was going to be a musician. I was going to go for broke.
Well, we, all of us, and I'm starting with myself and the choristers, we are so fortunate that you made that decision. And I'd like to think that it's not just a decision that you made, but it was also, as you said, meant to be. I see a lot of sense of destiny in that as well. And you've continued to grace us with music, the world now. And you mentioned earlier, we don't have time to really go into it, but you mentioned earlier your decision to go out to the West Coast and to get a certification in writing scores for TV and for films and that sort of thing. And just my little editorial. Oh, before I do this, my next thing and my last thing is to ask you to give the final word, whatever your final word is. If you have a final word that you want to give, whatever that might be, you'll have the opportunity to do that. But my little editorial is also, among the many other things that are admirable about you and about your story, is how willing you have been over the course of your life to sort of step into the unknown, to do the different thing from what other people might think you would do, to take the chance, if you will, to take the plunge is another way of putting that. But that's something that's really inspiring as well as is getting the opportunity to study and to perform and to share your music. But as I promised, here is the opportunity for you to give a final word, whatever that final word might be.
Uh, I, gee, that's, I think I can just be eternally grateful uh, for the gift of music. Um, I speak with gratitude because I look back, because I'm old enough now to look a long way back and see the path. Certainly to have my pathway crossed with you and the choristers. I've always appreciated your work and what the choir does. I had a chance to work with other members in other things in the Civic Music Association in Milwaukee.
Yes.
So, and it's been a wonderful. It's just a wonderful journey. I don't write as much as I used to, because I always there always seems to be. I just don't write for the sake of writing. There's usually some purpose in what I write. Just so you know, and the members of the choir know, from your giving me that idea to write about or use Mary McLeod Bethune's literary will. The whole work ended up being part of being the showcase of the opening of the Performing Arts Center at Bethune-Cookman University.
Yes.
Okay, so that was all again from you, James.
Oh,
Okay.
guys.
Okay, you're the one. You know, I had not thought of Mary McLeod Bethune, and so just to say, I with much gratitude, the gift of music and the gift to sing has just been very wonderful for me, and I appreciate it, and I hope I have done some things to show how much I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judith. Thank you so much. You have, by sharing as you have, and by lighting up our lives with your music. That's just been an incredible bit to all of us. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. And I thank you for taking this time to have a conversation with me. Time has flown by, but I have enjoyed the opportunity to talk with you. Judith Marie Baity, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James Kinchin and the choristers.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Bye-bye.